A lot of people, I feel like they don't succeed in trading because they quit too early. Nobody said it was easy, and I don't think anybody thought it was going to be easy getting into it. I would say to those people, see it through to the best of your ability. I think you'd be very happy with the result.
What's up, traders? Welcome back to another TFT interview. My name is Kenta. Today we're joined with our trader Evan. He's funded with us $200,000 and he's gotten over $40,000 payout with us. How's it going, Evan? How you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining. To start off the interview, just want to ask you, how did you get into trading in the first place? Where did it all start?
I was just getting out of high school. It was around end of 2020 time. I was just graduating and I didn't really know much about it. I had heard of stocks, the AMD crisis kind of happened a little bit before that, or it might have been a little bit after actually. And I had lost maybe 100, 200 bucks then. And I kind of wrote it off as oh, this is a scam. And then it was about 6 to 8 months later, I had run into a friend of a friend. I didn't really know them personally, but I had heard that they'd made millions. So I was like, oh, what's this trading stuff about? I had dabbled in it a little bit here and there, but I didn't really start getting consistent until about, I would say 2 years ago. I really started to take it more seriously and try to learn, grow as much as I can.
So when you first got started, did you trading live funds? When did the transition happen over to valuation firm space?
Yeah, so I started with Robinhood and I was just leverage trading. I didn't really know what I was doing, just placing options, hoping that it would go into profit. When I first started with Forex, I started with demo trading for about, I would say, 1 to 2 months just to kind of get the hang of it, learning how to buy, sell, create limits and all. And then I just hopped right into live. I saw a YouTube video talking about how it can kind of mess with your psychology playing with demo too much and not really learning with live capital. So just got right into it.
What did you start with? What was your starting capital?
I had 3,000-4,000 saved up at the time. So I'd put about 75% of that in. And I was risking, I would say 100, 200 bucks per trade.
How did that end up? Did you end up losing it? Did you make money? What did that look like?
Yeah, that was back when I followed signals when I was first starting. Forgot the name of the person who, but it was a little group. I had lost I think 1,000 and I was like, yeah, this isn't it. So then that's when we heard about farms and I was like, oh, we can use all this funding. My issue wasn't really losing trades. It was when I lost, I was over leveraging way too much. So I heard about this larger capital and kind of started to get into it. I failed, I think it was 5 to 10 challenges before I actually got funded for my first one. My first one, I actually failed right off the bat when I got the live account. Yeah, it stung. It definitely hurt, but there's lessons to be learned with that. Over leveraging way too much at the time, just kind of going old. I wanted the Lambo, the flashy life. But, with trading, you learn the hard way with that. Over time, I had dialed down with my risk management and kind of perfected it. I think with my problem, I've always understood, reading the market, fluencies and all that. That was never really an issue. It was, I couldn't get over that block with psychology. I just, one problem or the other, I had to kind of get through.
Was it sort of like a boom and bust cycle where you be up for a bit and then you lose it all type of deal?
For me, at first, it was when I want to trade, I was like, well, I'm unstoppable. Tomorrow I might have $1 million. And then when I would lose the trade, I was like, what am I even doing here, And so it was really a big back and forth between the two, and I could never really just stay level.
And so it was really tied to your psychology of your emotions.
Yeah, way over attached to every trade I was in, just praying that it's going to be a winner, and way over attached to just the trading lifestyle overall, just begging that this next trade is going to be a banking trade.
What's your risk management strategy look like right now? Do you have a max trades you take per day or a max percentage you can lose? What does that look like? I'm
a little bit different than I've seen some of your previous interviews. A lot of people I see risk, 0.25, 0.5%. I take all my trades based off of a confluency grade scale. So there's A trade, A plus trade, B trade, and I rank that based on how many confluencies I find per trade. And so that kind of goes hand in hand with how much I'm going to risk. I typically start off with around 0.75 to 1% risk, and I'll send it as testing entry. And then from there, if I see my entry go into profit, I actually load more.
So you're looking at 0.75 to 1% on the first entry. And then you maybe look for, would you say a pullback or something into a level that you're looking for to add more into it?
Yeah, so if I see it'll pull back and it doesn't hit my stop loss and it will continue into profit, I'll think the momentum's going my way and I'll actually like load maybe another 0.5% risk, maybe 1% more risk.
Okay. And do you set your stop loss to break even on the first trade at that point?
At one point, my trade play out a lot more now. I used to do that a lot, and I was noticing that was kind of my problem with getting a little too emotional really quickly, right when it's 1-to-1 or maybe even not 1-to-1. I was going right to stop loss, break even. And I trade mainly gold, so it's a really volatile pair. That can really, affect your trading stop.
Are you able to share your screen by any chance to show us like maybe trades that you kind of stacked into and kind of what the strategy looks like there?
Yeah, I'll start on the daily, weekly as well, and I'll check for a bias. So for example, and this is on the 4 hour, so I can go down into a shorter time frame as well. I had entered my first sell entry like right about here, holding about a 30 pip stop loss. We'll go into the 1 hour now, and I'll show you here. So I'm holding this trade throughout all, these wicks here, and then I see it looks like it was right here at this first 1 hour wick, and then it didn't load any until these wicks had played out. So I'll see that it didn't break through to the upside, and I have this momentum to the downside now. So it looks like my trade is going in my favor. And this is where I added these extra loads. So I loaded one here on the 1 hour. It looks like it's about to break down below this level of support that we have here. And then I load a second entry right here. So about 10 pips below that. So about every 10 pips, I would load an extra entry as well.
So after it broke down the first time, like you hadn't taken any profit yet, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. Or here, to show exactly where I would have entered, it would have been like this. Yeah, and I remember this trade, I pulled profit right about right here. I saw the 4 hour was kind of starting to reject.
Each stop loss, is it different? Like, do you set like different lot sizes for each of those positions?
Yeah. So I'll load the same lot size, but I adjust my stop loss as the market is moving. So for example, when we break below here, I'll have all these 3 loads, but I'll hold my stop loss somewhere around this range right here. It's kind of like a mental stop loss that I'll hold at that point.
You're entering the same amount of lots for each one.
Correct.
And what does that look like on your account? How many lots does that look like?
I like to use 10 standard, but this one I had a 30 pip stop loss, which is a little bit more than I usually use. So I was doing 8.
You already understand, like based off of 8 or 10 lots, like you know exactly how many pips will be how much of drawdown, like dollar wise. And so what was your exit? Like what was telling you, okay, I'm gonna get out of this? Like was it that it broke down, hit a certain level, or like what were you looking at?
I was looking for more volume here. I was expecting if we were to break below this level that it was just going to absolutely sink. And I pulled right about right here. I saw these rejections and I expected volume to come in somewhere, and I see it rejecting off this level. So I was in a decent amount of profit at this time. I think I was up like 6%, 7%. So I took my winnings for the day.
Like, are you only on the 1 hour? Like, are you looking at lower time frames? Like, what does that look like?
So I like to watch my trade play out through the 1 hour just because emotionally it's a little bit less to see, versus like a 1 minute. It's pretty chaotic. It's a little bit calm on, the higher time frame. And I'm able to see the bigger picture of the trade versus being in a small time frame. You kind of get caught up in the quick movements.
Okay, so you don't go down to the 5 minute or anything like that.
I do for my entry. I do.
Show me like exactly like what are you looking at on the 5 minute to catch that entry? Yeah, because that first position looks like you almost got stopped out on that one.
Yeah, so the first position, that's why I don't load as much. I could have loaded, for example, all 3 entries right there, but then it's kind of like a tester. So I'll put when I'm okay with losing in at first, and I like to see how the trade plays out from there. Then once I'm more confident and I have even more confluences as the trade is running, that's when I'll start to add in load entries. So for example, looks like this one went up here, went back down, and it rejected off of this level of resistance right here for a second time with a good amount of volume as well. And then it looks like about right here was where I entered my load entry. So as we're breaking this 5 minute level of support right here, and we have some volume picking up, looks like I picked second entry right there. Then we have a slight pullback, but not a lot of strength with it. And then as we start to fall down again, I add in my third load entry. With these, I'm expecting volume to keep carrying the trade down. So I'm not really expecting it to reverse anyways. And if it does, I'm keeping a super tight stop loss at this point, somewhere around above here. So at that point, it's more of like a break-even trade.
Interesting. Okay. So you're really betting on it, like once you've loaded it up, you're really betting on it to continue that momentum, or you're basically just going to get stopped out for like a small loss.
Exactly. Yeah. So either a pretty big win or a moderately small loss.
I like that. So the risk management is like, okay, let me get a feeler entry. Maybe I lose that 0.75, 1% or something. Now, if you do get stopped out on that, do you continue to trade that day, or is it like that one and done for you on the day?
I like to stop around like 3% loss for the day, 3.5. Anything beyond that, it kind of is a bit uncomfortable for me. Anywhere within the 3% range, I'm pretty comfortable with it. Considering if I'm risking 1%, I just need a 1 to 3 to. Yeah, I'll take multiple trades in a day. Obviously, everybody needs to know when to stop as well. You can't just trade all day, but I have no problem risking my profits.
So what indicators are you using? Like, obviously I see like support and resistance. Maybe are those like supply and demand zones? Like,
I'm marking high levels of support and resistance that have had strong reactions before, daily time frames to kind of see where they correspond with the bigger movements. And then I set alerts. And then from there, I just let the alerts get hit. And then from there, I'm for the extra confluencies, maybe support or, trend line, Fibonacci, anything, of that sort.
what did you look at on this trade? Like, well, you obviously hit like a certain level of like supply, I'm assuming, and the resistance, but were you looking at Fibonacci? Like, were you looking at trend lines? Like, what else were you looking at here to like?
This one was on the higher time frame. That was a really strong level of resistance. So I was confident. And as I saw the rejections, I noticed that we have more momentum pulling down. I didn't have much of influences with this one here. Maybe this was like a V plus trade where I had like maybe 1 or 2 extra confluences.
When the price reaches that level, are there like candle patterns that you look at? Like specifically, are you looking for wicks? Like, is there something just as far as just the candles in general that you look at to maybe enter? Or
yeah, so I'm looking for if a wick is going to wipe out where I would believe previous stops to be. So for example, you'll see over here where we had most recently tested this zone, people are going to have their stops above here, anybody who's sold in this area. So we'll see the wipe them out here and then carry on down to the downside. So I'm looking for liquidity to be pulled. That's mainly what I would look for with the wicks or any lower time frame.
and then when it comes to like the fibs, what Fibonacci are you looking at? Like
7. Here, I'll pull it up for you here. So in this case, I would base my entry. I typically will take it off 1 and I'll put my stop loss above 1.143, but I also do like to look for entries around 0.88 and occasionally 764 as well. But my golden zone is actually not typically 1, but somewhere closer to 0.88.
oh, okay, interesting. With this like fibs and all of like your strategy, like where did you get this information? Was it from a mentor, like YouTube videos? Like what was?
Yeah, at first I was doing YouTube, and then about 2 years back when I started to take it more seriously, I did about a 6-month private mentorship. It's where I learned mainly most of the skills that I use to trade today. And surprisingly, taking the mentorship, they had told me I need to actually stop confusing myself with 150 different confluencies. Back then, my chart used to be marked like you couldn't even see the chart at that point. And really just keeping it simple was a lot of that helped my psychology as well.
But you took this mentorship. Did you find this person through like Instagram or YouTube or something?
It was through the previous, the signal group that I used to take back when I first started. And they were in that, they had like a chat for it, and they were kind of just trolling. They were actually taking the opposite trades as the signal provider. And so I just, DM'd them and I was like, hey, if you have any knowledge I could get from you, I'd appreciate it. And then they actually decided, they sent me a link and they were like, I'm doing a 6-month mentorship. So if you want to be a part of it.
Nice. Like, what did that education cost you?
It was actually free.
No way, really?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you got this information for free.
Yeah. I know it doesn't sound believable, but yeah.
It's interesting, yeah, because, at least I believe in, investing in yourself, investing in your education. A lot of times when people don't spend the money, they're not as invested, or they don't they don't care about the thing as much. But it's pretty cool to see someone like invest in themselves and it be something free, and you see like success come from it like this. Like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty rare too.
So are you just trading just gold, or do you look at other pairs as well?
Gold's my favorite. I used to love GJ back in the day, but I noticed I'm most from gold, so I kind of just stick to what I'm good at.
Okay, and so you're not looking at any like moving averages? Is there like a time of day that you're trading? Like, what else about your strategy is like important to you?
So I prefer to trade sometime between London and New York. mainly around like 4 my time is kind of when the volume starts to pick up. But if I see a setup I like, I don't really mind what time of day it is. I'll take the trade.
Got it. Okay. So do you typically get up pretty early?
Yeah, I'm actually, for my time zone, I'm kind of like nocturnal. I wake up around like noon to 2 p.m. and I'll stay up until like 7 sometimes, depending on, every day is different depending on if the trade runs for hours or if it's a quick trade.
Wait, you get up at night, like in like the middle of the night, or what?
Around like noon my time, depending on the day. Some days I'll go to bed at 4 if my trade's already done before New York opens, or if I'm taking my trip around New York, I'll get like really a low amount of sleep, like 3, 4 hours.
That's cool. So that is that it? The fibs, the support resistance, like sort of supply and demand. You don't use any moving averages, or
Trend lines as well.
and how do you use your trend lines? Like, what does that look like exactly?
So for example, I'll find on the third break, if we break below on this, or it could be above as well. It could be to the upside or downside. I'll wait for 3 touches, and on the third, if it breaks through, I'll add that as a confluence.
Are you looking for trend lines to break in a certain direction? Like, it's trending a certain direction on like a higher time frame, or does that really matter to you? Like,
I like trends on a lower time frame, actually.
you're looking for something like this, basically, like on a 5 minute.
Yeah, so I'll use it as, like I said, when I'm kind of breaking my trades on a grade base. If I'm going to add this as a confluence, I'm already on the lower time frame looking for if there's a possible entry there. The bigger boxes here are going to be like on the daily level, and then the lines are going to be on maybe hour or 4 hour, like a lower time frame.
Was that also part of the mentorship? Like, was that something that they taught you? Like, at some point, were you maybe adding to losers? Like, I'm trying to kind of piece together this, you know what I mean? Like,
That was taught through the mentorship, and I had also seen I'll be like scrolling a lot on a lot of trading Instagram reels and all that, and I'd seen somebody mention it before. So I know I'm not the only one that does it, but I do know it's a more unique style of trading. Adding to losers, sometimes I'll do as well. For example, if my trade is 2 pips away from a stop loss and I believe it's about to reject, for example, if gold is making a wick, I'll add maybe an extra 5 to 8 lots just because I'm risking an extra 0.2%. The risk for the reward there is great in my opinion. But I rarely will add to a losing trade. I'll typically add to the trade when I'm already in profit.
I feel like that is a habit that maybe some traders in the beginning form, sort of like this dollar cost averaging type of trading mentality. And then the trade never stops going against you, and you just either blow your account or you don't know what to do, like you're kind of stuck with this huge loss.
Yeah, it definitely requires discipline to know when to just kind of let the trade end there and know you're wrong versus an actual opportunity to capitalize off of it.
You have a pretty simple strategy here. You're trading between London and New York, and you said you're on the West Coast, right? You're on, did you say Seattle?
Yeah.
Your trading session, what does it start at, like 1 a.m. or something, like 12 or something?
I'll normally get on the charts around like 10 to 11 p.m. my time.
Okay.
And then the whole night, basically, I'm trading.
Are you also working? Are you a student?
I used to sell cars for Mercedes when I was trading and working at the same time, but past, I would say 6 months, I found it to be that I was more profitable if I just stuck to trading full time.
Cool. So now you're just trading full time.
Correct.
And so when you were like working for Mercedes, or like even before that, would you say that that was allowing you to trade, like allowing you to be like, okay, I can risk this type of money? And like, at what point did you sort of transition to like, this is the thing that I want to do for like, my foreseeable future?
I knew that trading was something that I wanted to, have as my main source of income, at least for the time being, maybe not forever, but it's something that I wanted to earn a good amount on, take more seriously, have it be full time. I knew that before I had started working at that dealership. That was more just as a source of funds for me. And it did help a lot with psychology, knowing getting a decent sized check. I don't really have to worry about what happens with the account, especially if it's in its challenge phase, it's not even live.
You said you had maybe gone through 5 to 10 different challenges before you got to an actual live account. What type of amount of capital were you looking to get each time? And then like, how did you like come up with that number? Like, was there some sort of like, were you like thinking of like certain math behind it? Like how much you were trying to make per month, or like or like maybe something that you were comfortable losing? Like what was the thought process there?
When I first had lost those original 5 to 10 accounts, there At least the first 5 to 6, I would say there wasn't a lot of thought behind it. It was more buying and selling, and not really any strategy behind it. Just a lot of emotion, really. It wasn't until I had lost like quite a few that I started to kind of take a step back and kind of review my current strategy and psychology. And I was looking for errors. And I noticed that it wasn't really with my strategy because after I would say close the trade or maybe close at break even, my trades are winning a lot of the time. I just couldn't sit at the end of it. And my big problem was I could hold drawdown, no problem. But as soon as I got past 1 to 1 in profit, I was freaking out. And
Oh yeah, okay.
part of my, strategy, I don't have a super high win rate. I think it's about 50-50, maybe 40-60. I need to hold my trades more than just 1 to 1 if I want to be profitable.
Got it. Okay, so that was sort of your moment, is like, okay, if I can just hold these trades for longer, I'm gonna flip around like what's going on with my account, basically like my P&L.
Yeah, so I just tried it. I was like, well, what I'm doing right now is not working, obviously. So let's try change. And I was thinking, when I see all these, like, I don't know if it's the best place to look for advice, but I would look on Instagram and see these people have 100K running trades and all. And I'm thinking they're not doing that scalping. So they're obviously, they're doing something different and they're making money off of it. So I just figured, try. And, I don't hold for hundreds and hundreds of pips because I keep a pretty tight stop loss around like 20 pips. So even just letting my trade run 40-50 pips is 2 to 3%.
Right. Okay. And what was what allowed you, like, how did you shift to be able to hold longer? Was it just something that you were feeling, like an emotion you were feeling of like, I can't, like, how did you end up going, you know what, I'm just gonna let this thing run? Did you have to close your screen? Are you still sitting there watching it? Like, what was the transition there?
Yeah, I just, I wouldn't say that I'd done anything different. I think I had just come to a realization that, like, this is what I'm going to need to do if I want to make money in this. It was uncomfortable at first and it still can be, I'm still growing, but a big realization for me was just realizing like this has to change. I have to change what I'm doing or this isn't going to work. So even though it was uncomfortable to do so, I know that in the end, this is what's going to benefit me the most.
Right. Yeah, I mean, dude, it's interesting, right? Like the psychology of trading, where why is it so easy for, some traders to just hold a losing trade for however long with this like hope that this thing is going to turn around, whereas like when we're moving in profit, we have this fear of us losing the profit, and so we're willing to just close the trade when we're in profit, but we're not willing to hold it when we're in profit. It's like this backwards sort of psychological like block that traders get. It's like
everybody's unique too. So some people, they will draw down for more than $1, but then they can hold their winning trades for, however long, versus some people. I had no problem with drawdown. I don't know why, that just never fazed me. But then as you get to profit, I would think, this is my money in this market. I need to pull it. Not realizing, by pulling that, I'm denying myself more money when the trade continues to run into profit.
What do you think that is? Do you think it's like maybe like from our upbringing, like something psychological doing with our childhood, or
fear of money? I believe you have to kind of relearn how you view money. Seeing these bigger numbers, as I'm growing, I have to continue to adapt. And I think a lot of it as well was not letting it, like the big number, affect me so much. I started viewing things in a percentage based, which still, I'm human. I'll have errors every once in a while still, but it helped a lot versus when I'm looking at, $10,000. Like that's a lot of money, for a normal American. So that, like, wanting to pull there, which still that would be 5% on my account. It's a pretty good trade. But even, 4,000 was a big hurdle for me too. It's as you continue to go, you have to keep pushing your limits as to what you're comfortable with. Is what a lot of people improve.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm very fascinated with psychology. It's like I know some traders that will literally get into positions and hold them for so long, but like literally the detriment is that they will hold it until it literally peaks to like the highest, and you're like, why aren't you taking at this point? Like it's so high, and then they'll keep holding until it comes back and literally either they break even or they make like nothing on the trade or maybe even lose money. And it's like, why are some traders able to do that but it's like, then the others are the exact opposite. And it's like, I wonder, like you said, it's kind of like the idea of money. Like, okay, maybe more people are greedy than others, and maybe more, maybe the fear of money is like deeper in others. I don't know. It's interesting thing to think about for sure. So, okay, so tell me a little bit about like your goals in trading. Are you looking to like get like more funding? Like, what's your sort of like long-term look like here? I mean, you're obviously, pretty young, but like, what's the outlook here?
One of my big goals, I was actually pretty close to it. So I have the 600 current, and then I wanted to get 1 million funded. That is still the goal. So 1 million funded is the next goal. And I had 800, or I had 600, and then I had 200 more in phase two. I lost that one, so I'm like at 600 still. But goal is by March to have everything all live 1 million.
Tell me a little bit, because you had phase two, like so at some point you're in drawdown, right? Let's say you're in, I don't know, 5-6% drawdown. Do you adjust your risk management? Do you change like how much you're risking? Instead of risking 0.7, maybe you're risking, 0.3, 0.4. Like, do you adjust that, or do you just stick with what you're doing and make sure to kind of, keep it rigid that way? Or like, what's that look like?
It depends on what I'm on. If I'm on a live account, then I will adjust my risks. I would prefer to not lose a live account. But if it's a challenge, I'm really not afraid to lose a challenge account. I approach them with a lot more speed. I'd like to either just pass or fail the challenge. And then, especially now that more payouts are coming in, I don't really mind. I'm comfortable with what I'm spending on the challenge. So if I lose it, I lose it. I'll move on to the next one. It's not the end of the world. And then if it's a live account, I get it pretty quickly because I don't really change my risk on challenge accounts. So I'm not really backing down into lower risk or anything, which may take longer. If I'm going to pass the account, it's going to be passed most likely within the week.
Wow. Okay. That's pretty cool. Yeah. You're really being aggressive on the account. Okay. But once you get to the live, you're like, all right, I have the live. Let's just maybe get some payouts here. Keep the risk a little bit more tight.
Yeah. Cause with a challenge account, it's paper trading, and you're not, I mean, even technically with the live account as well, but in the end, if I make 5% on the live account, I get payout for it.
Tell me a little bit about it. Could be during, while you've been trading the evaluation funding, or maybe when you were live. Like, what was your biggest loss, the most memorable one in that department? And then what about one of your biggest wins that is most memorable in that department as well?
My biggest win that I can remember, it's not the most that I've made, but it's my first 5-figure day. So I made 10K in a day. It was 14. Gold had just took off. I was in a buy and I had loaded twice. So I had about 18 lots running. It jumped up quite a bit and I had pulled because I was at about 7K profit. I actually went against my trading strategy and I would have been done normally there, but I entered again and it continued up. I believe that one was actually more just by luck on that first trade.
Okay.
But it brought me up to 14. Yeah, I don't think I'll ever forget that day.
Was that on live funding?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So that one was a big day for me. I would say biggest loss, I've never had like a crazy, like terrible loss. Maybe I'll lose a challenge account. I remember there was this one time where I went like 3 weeks, I think it was, without winning a single trade. And that was honestly more detrimental. And they were all just 1%, 1%, 0.5%, like nothing crazy, no huge loss. But it was more like I got myself into a little bit of a rut of thinking like, did I lose my touch? Like, do I here? I started to question myself a little bit too much.
What did you find out about that time? Was it just the strategy at that period wasn't working? Like, did you have to adjust things? Like, what did it look like for that?
For that time period, there was very low volatility in the market. And I noticed strategy works a bit better with more volatility. I believe that I was just kind of trying to force something that wasn't there. Sometimes there just isn't a trade available. I was in the market every day thinking like, I need to make this much today, instead of thinking how percent do I want to make this month. And when you think in a longer time frame, you're like, I don't really see the best trade right now. I'm going to just give it time. I have the rest of I got a lot of month left. Back then it was just super like desperate for I want 3% every day or whatever the target may be. And so when you're chasing down that daily goal, it's not going to be there daily. The market's not going to move a whole bunch every day. So, trading desperately like that was really like, I think what got me in that rut.
Like you said something about the daily goal, right? So let's say you have this sort of aim to make money? Obviously, like in today, like you get up, you're like, because you're also saying I'm comfortable losing 2 to maybe 3%, in a day. You can't be losing 2 to 3% every single day, right? Let's say you lost 2, maybe 3% yesterday. Like, what's your approach to the next day? Like, do you have a goal, or if you get to a certain point, like maybe 1%, you're like, I'm just gonna take this and just come back tomorrow, or like, you know what I mean? Like, what's the psychology behind that?
Yeah, so with my live accounts, like I was saying, I traded a bit differently. The challenges, I'm super aggressive with them. But with the live account, I'm a little bit more cautious. So the strategy I mainly use is after every payout, you start fresh. I try my best to win the first trade, so I'm super selective with the first trade. I'll wait 3 days if I need to, and I'll wait for something that you can never be positive, but I'll be pretty sure, all the confluences are at it's an A plus trade, and then I'll try and get my account anywhere above, 2 to 3% profit. Then that's when I start to get a little bit more aggressive because I'm playing with profit. As soon as my account gets in a drawdown, I'm typically not really affected. So for mine, it's a 200K account. Anything in the 190s, I'm not really affected. Once it gets into 180, so anything over 5% drawdown, I'll start to really, slow down on my risk. I'll risk, 0.5%, 0.25, whatever the necessary risks may be per trade. I think before that, I'll stick with 1% risk to start off.
Let's just say 180, 188, like, or like 189, 188, you're like under 5%. Are you getting it back up to a certain number? Like,
Yeah, take it in baby steps.
okay, you kind of just build it up until you're back up to break even.
Actually, just last week, I had some drawdown. I went down to, I think it was like 188, 189. It's back at break even now. And what I did for that was I like to secure 2% at a time. When I'm in deep drawdown, I just keep it 1 to 2, 1 to 2, 1 to 2.
You're playing more a defensive, like you're like, okay, we're up 2%, let's just take it. Let's just take it. And like continuously kind of just taking that just to build it back up. And then as you're back up into profit, you'll risk that profit a little bit more aggressively to push the envelope a little bit.
Exactly. And that's when I'm a lot more comfortable with letting my trades run into, 1 to 4, 1 to 5, 1 to 7.
Right. You're ready to hold that thing because you're like, you know what? I'm just playing with profit anyway. Let's just see where this thing can go.
Yeah. So worst case, if I lose a trade, I'm not even in drawdown. I'm still in profit on the account.
That's definitely like a psychological hack, I swear, on like the accounts. Like when you're playing with profit and you're allowing yourself to like let the trade play out longer, I think that's definitely a good approach for, especially with these funded accounts, because it's usually like max 10% drawdown on, or you can only risk like 10% of that count. So if you have a 200K, it's like 20K, right? So it's like, you can't look at it like, oh, every time I risk 1%, it's kind of like you're risking 10%. You know what I mean?
And so with, when my account's in profit, that's where I'll be able to risk, 3%. Like you said, in a day, I could do that more than 3 days in a row without the account being gone. But if my account is up, say 8, 9%, I lose 3% in a day, I'll call it done for the day. I'm still up 6%. So that's when I can, it helps me sleep at night knowing I still am going to make money on this account.
When it comes to like fundamentals, what's your thought process there? If I just say fundamentals, like what comes to mind? Like obviously news is impactful, so you want to make sure you're, checking for big, impactful news that are going to come out. You don't want to get caught in something like that. But is that something that you look at ahead? Are you trading the news? Are you maybe looking ahead to say, okay, CPI comes out in 3 days. Like I think the trades are going this direction. Like it seems like you're more so getting in and out in the day, but like, does that play a role in your trading?
Yes, I'll take it all into account. I'm not too heavy on it. I do trade news. I won't shy away from it. I never will shy away from news, the volatility. And I'll definitely be, cautious. I know the risks of the high volatility, and I know what can come from it. I wouldn't say I play too much into, the world economics, into where the price may move. I'm more watching the basic, chart analysis. I try not to confuse myself too much.
Do you like ever enter positions before news comes out, or is it more so let news happen and then I'll kind of jump into that volatility at some point when I see it hitting certain levels?
Either I'll have my trade already running before news starts, and then if it hits stop loss, it hits stop loss, or it'll hit TP. Volume's just going to take it whichever way the price is meant to go. But if, say, news session just hit, and then it gets to the zone where I'll have an alert set, and I see, a nice rejection, and then maybe a retrace to retest that zone, maybe I'll enter lower risk, maybe 0.5%, considering, volume can wipe your account out there. I would say I pretty often trade news though.
I was just curious because gold with the news, gold can, I've seen it, it just takes off. Like, you're like, whoa, it just went up like $6 in like, like 3 seconds. You're like, what the heck just
It
happened?
can go wild. And if you're on the right side, it's definitely a fun experience.
When that last like high up on gold, when that, yeah, it was like on a Sunday or something. It was insane. I was like, wait, what's going on? It's like, is it? I was like looking at the charts. I was like, I don't even really trade gold, but I set alarms for different things. And I was like, what is gold doing right now? It's insane. I was seeing this thing fly up, and I saw like some traders that I follow like caught the move, and I was like, dude, that's insane. Like catching like, $15 move within like 4 minutes or something. It's like,
I caught like the first $3 of it and I pulled, and I just couldn't sleep that night looking at the chart.
you're like, yes, I got to trade. And then you're like, oh my God, it went 10 more dollars. You're
Yeah,
like,
I went to go celebrate. So I'm like, it was within like 5 minutes of entering the trade. I'm like, oh, let's go. All right, done for the day. And I look back, literally not even 15 seconds later, and that just took off without me.
dude, I feel that. I think we've all been there where we're like enter a trade and literally get out of this trade maybe a few minutes before, when you're like, if I would have just held that thing, it would have been like 6-7x of like what I made. And it's like, I feel like that's also like a psychological barrier that you need to go, you know what? It's okay. Like it happens, and you just have to like let it go, come back tomorrow, continue my strategy, and not let it affect you, because FOMO is real.
I used to say to myself, what's meant for me will be mine, kind of saying like, if that was supposed to be profit for me, then I would have been in the trade still. And so I take it as not something to get angry about, but more as a lesson. Trading is definitely a learning game. I don't claim, completely master trading. I'm getting more profits coming in, but you have to take those losses, or even if you won, but you still feel like you lost, say you missed out on a good amount of profit. It's all about, learning from it and then release. So don't hold on to it going into the next trade.
If there's like any traders like watching right now that are struggling, maybe they're having trouble passing, getting to the live funded, or maybe they're trading a live and they just keep blowing it. Like, what would your suggestion or your tips be for this type of trader?
If you're in that like beginning rut where you haven't really seen much funds or any, in that case, dedication is a big part of it, discipline. I believe that a lot of traders are struggling more with psychology than, their analysis. I believe most people can, learn analysis within 2 to 3 weeks. And I don't think people actually take in the seriousness of, how much your psychology impacts your trades. Everybody talks about psychology, but how many people are actually like, doing the work to, create the solutions for these problems? And are they even, taking notes on their own actions, their own thoughts, point out these problems, or are they just letting it fly and then going on to the next trade and creating the same mistake?
Do you journal your trades? Like, what was the thing that helped you kind of go back and see your mistakes and then implement a plan to kind of change that? I remember you saying like, okay, like I'm not letting my trades run long enough. Like, was that something you simply just saw and then you just implemented, or like what was the plan there?
Yeah, so I had a journal. After you exit the trade, within the first hour, typically you'll know whether you messed up or not. If the trade goes an extra 2% in profit and I feel some type of way about it, I jot it down and I say, could have let trade run longer. So and so is why I pulled. Maybe there was a slight rejection on a lower time frame, and then on the higher time frame, it continued in the same direction. Whatever it may be, I'll jot it down, and then over time, you get to look back. And I'll go back maybe once a month, not too much. But when I do go back, I'll deeply analyze every single trade or anything that I've written down, and I'll kind of look to see, what progress have I made from the last month, and what steps do I need to take moving forward now to continue growing.
Do you have like a physical notepad, or do you do it on like Excel or something?
I have some of it on like a notes document, but then on my phone. But I have a journal. I'm in my office right now, but in my room, I have a journal that I keep most of my entries. So I'll actually put like the entry level, how I was feeling in the trade, how I was feeling after the trade, why I closed, and do feel like I won that trade. Because sometimes even when I win the trade, I'll feel like I still didn't win. I know that sounds weird, but
You can have like a winning trade, but you feel like I didn't follow what I should have followed, and because of that, it's not a winning trade in my opinion, type of thing.
if I leave money on the table and I know that I didn't follow my plan for whatever reason it may be, I'm to some extent, upset with myself. Not in a bad psychology way, but with a way where I'll check myself and analyze and see where I need to change things.
At least like comfortable with going, okay, like if my goal here is to make 2R or whatever, like you're like, I'm keep taking like the 1R or like less than that. My goal is to get to the 2R. Then you also have to have a goal, and mentally speaking, to like either take like be able to take small losses or break even on trades and not take these huge losses, because it's like you have to protect your psychology in that way. But you also have to be prepared, if that's your goal, to go for like a higher R, then to like be comfortable with this potentially could just break even, you know, and like, you know, that thought process.
With a lot of my trades, though, where my stops are kept are very intentional. So my entries do as well, but I'm not too fond on, unless I'm, in a pretty high risk trade, maybe I have like more than two loads at a time. I believe that the market has moved for me to adjust my stops accordingly. I don't typically adjust stop loss based on how much percent I'm up. I like to really keep it based on the market's movements. When I used to adjust based on, oh, I'm up 1-to-1, I'll put stops to break even. The market doesn't care if you're up 1-to-1. It's going to keep moving whatever direction it needs to go. So when I started to kind of change my perspective on that, like I'm up 1-to-1 right now, but this market could easily reverse into break even and then continue into profit, which gold does that a lot. So I think a lot of people do get stopped out on their winning trades, when if you would have just held your stop loss for a little bit longer, it would have continued to profit. But at the same time, you have to trade how you're comfortable. I don't care to lose 1%. It doesn't affect my psychology at all.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think, anyone that's listening, watching this right now, it's like you can adopt someone's strategy, you can adopt their risk management strategy, but ultimately, like, you have to figure out, what are you comfortable with? What are you psychologically comfortable with risking? Are you comfortable with being in, up, over like 1R and then, losing the risk on that trade? Or is that something that affects you so much that you have to break even? You'd rather break even on these trades, because everyone's different. Like Evan, he's okay with losing that 1%, but maybe like if someone else took that and lost that 1%, they would, maybe start to feel a little bit on tilt, and like it would affect them to continue trading that day or whatever the case may be. So it's like, figure out, and this only takes time, right? You got to trade and figure out like, what does that mean for you? I really appreciate you hopping on and kind of sharing that, because it's really important to like talk about the risk management, because I feel like that and the psychological aspect is like really what is holding traders back in getting to the goals that they want to make, and that type of thing. Is there anything else that you want to share with the audience before we wrap this thing up?
One more thing to the people that we were talking about that maybe not received the goals that they're looking for yet. Right before I had really made that major breakthrough, I had this moment where I really reached like a low point in my trading career. And I remember talking to a friend, and I was like, they don't really know trading at all. So it was kind of unbiased advice. And I was telling them, I don't really know if this is going to play out, like how it could play out, and a little bit of fear, included in that. And I remember them just saying, like, at this point, I had been doing it for like a year and 3 months. And they're like, you've come this far now, it's possible. So a lot of people, I feel like they don't succeed in trading because they quit too early. Nobody said it was easy, and I don't think anybody thought it was going to be easy getting into it, or like really getting into trading. So you knew that getting into it. I would say to those people, see it through to the best of your ability, and I think you'd be very happy with the result.
I agree with you, man. It's a very personal journey, and the timeline is just dependent on yourself and your own journey. It's not to be compared with others. There's traders that I've talked to that took them 7 years to get to a point where they had to make a change. And then at that, maybe 8, 9, 10 year mark, they're 10x to everything that they lost, So it's really just dependent on yourself. This is something that, and hopefully you agree with me here, it's like something that you really believe in, something that you're confident in, that you want to pursue, then, continue doing so and believe in yourself. Figure out what makes you feel confident in this and gives you that consistency that you need, the discipline that you need to persevere in this trading game, right?
Yeah.
Awesome, Evan. Well, I appreciate you so much for jumping on today. If you want, we can set up a part 2 down the line, hopefully once you get that $1 million funding or plus, right?
Oh, yeah.
And wish you the best on your journey, and we'll connect soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
No problem. Yeah. Thanks, guys. If you guys don't mind, please hit the subscribe button. Throw us a like and show us some love in the comment section, and we'll talk to you guys soon. All right, guys. Peace.